This is the Marathon Handbook Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Doyle, and this is a special Thanksgiving episode where we're going to talk Strava chaos, Strava controversy, and the hottest trends forthcoming in 2025. I am joined today by my colleagues. She rode over on the Mayflower, ended up in the Northeast. Our colonist, our pilgrim, Katelyn Tossi, and the turkey of this pod, Alex Sear.
What? Okay.
I workshopped that one for about 30 seconds, and I'm not sure how that one worked out. But
I was expecting something crazier. So what does that make you, Michael? Michael's the stuffing.
The same thing. Is he the stuffing of the turkey?
I'm the stuffing. Yeah, I make a mean stuffing, actually. I don't want to go down a Bon Appetit rabbit hole here, but there's a recipe out there on the internet, on YouTube. It's just a classic. I love making it. I love eating it. Yeah. So although, Alex, you and I are Canadian, so we're just sort of lost right now. We call it American Thanksgiving.
When is
Thanksgiving?
Canadian Thanksgiving? You guys have
6 weeks ago.
Oh,
6 weeks ago.
Okay.
We are long done being
we get our
thanks
out of the way early, and then just roll. Christmas is the big holiday, I'd say, in Canada. Whereas Thanksgiving it's the center of the universe. Do you guys do Caitlin? Because you're in Costa Rica.
Yep.
But you're American. So do you guys do you do a turkey and the whole thing?
You know, over the years, we have done Thanksgiving here with friends, either who are from Canada, and we mix the Canada and the American Thanksgiving, or friends from the States. But to be honest, people have kind of adopted it here as well. Costa Rica, in a lot of ways, gets very Americanized. Like, their Halloween, which maybe there wasn't a lot of Halloween celebration before, and the kids do get dressed up and go out trick-or-treating. These are all kind of things that have evolved. And I do have a bunch of friends down here who like to do different Thanksgiving dinners and have kind of made it traditions in their own households. And so every year it's been really nice to be invited to Thanksgivings that actually are put on by my Costa Rican friends, which is it's just like, I think Thanksgiving is such a nice tradition to kind of, if you're going to adopt one, adopting Thanksgiving is a really, really nice one. So yeah, usually we do have great Thanksgiving plans down here as well.
Do you guys like turkey?
I love it.
Oh boy, here we go.
Come on.
Oh, Sear, you don't eat turkey?
No, I eat turkey. I eat turkey reluctantly. It's just like any other meat to me. I think people get caught up in the story and they don't want to admit to each other that turkey's just average.
That's like a lukewarm take, I'd say. It's not a hot take. I've heard this before. The sort of like turkey is sort of like a vessel for gravy and for cranberry sauce. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. There's nothing better than the turkey, cranberry sauce, and gravy. It's this weird, salty, sweet thing.
I love it. Yeah.
Just incredible. But I hear you, Alex. Like turkey's like maybe it's like a solid B or a B plus when it comes to main courses. But there's something really nostalgic about it. Okay. Enough turkey talk. Although I guess running related segue here. Have you guys ever done a turkey trot before?
I haven't. Oh, of course you have. You have, Alex. Yeah. And you've won them all, the 5Ks.
Mine was a 10K. It was this glorified turkey trot. Yeah. No, the organizing committee was being ambitious that year. I did win it. I think I was 19.
I knew it.
I did happen to win it.
I did happen to win it. It was in my home province, Canada, Prince Edward Island. It was a small race. It wasn't that big of a race, but with cross country and marathon season or half marathons, 10K seasons after that, I never did a turkey trot since. I'm like 10 years out.
I kind of love the concept of the turkey trot, where it's like millions of people across the United States and Canada as well on Thanksgiving weekend eat just a crazy amount of food, and then they're like, now we're gonna go run a 5K, as if you're gonna burn that all off in running your 5K. It's just kind of it's a repulsive, incredible concept, and I totally love it. I think it's super cool. I think it's super cool that people do it. I think it's super cool that people who don't usually run do it. I think that's It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's all about like going out with the family and having a nice activity before your big Thanksgiving dinner and all of that. Here, we don't have any turkey trots or any 5Ks like that because we actually don't get Thursday off. So you see a lot of people that if they actually are going to do a Thanksgiving dinner, they might not even do it on Thursday. They might push it to the weekend because people are working throughout the week. We don't get that holiday. But there is something here that I do that's super fun. It has a very funny name. It's called the Chancho Run, which means the pig run. And it's on December 24th. So it's Christmas Eve. It's kind of like the same idea. And it's this running club, this road running club that puts it together here every year. And it's a 10-mile race. And so it's a little more, so it's a little more intense. It's a little longer, but it's something really fun, a nice tradition that I've done for the past bunch of years to do like a nice fast 10 miler in the morning. And it actually tends to go downhill. So it's super fun because it's one of those really fast races because it's point to point. You go out to a certain point and then run all the way downhill. And so 10 miles downhill before your, the Christmas Eve dinner and that kind of stuff. So I like starting Christmas Eve like that.
It's not a bad idea. I like that a lot more than like, there's a very famous Boxing Day 10 miler in kind of this steel town in Ontario in Canada called the Boxing Day 10 miler. It's in Hamilton, Ontario. It's been going on for like 100+ years, I think. And that's like a Boxing Day 10 miler and it's kind of hilly. That's a brutal ask on somebody. Or like these hair of the dog January 1st morning runs.
Oof. Yeah. I don't know about
that.
Yeah. I don't think so.
You want to run a race before celebrating.
Yeah.
You don't want to celebrate and then having to race. It's like planning a trip, a destination race, planning a trip around it. You want your race to be at the start of the trip, not the end. Work hard and then enjoy. Otherwise, it's just wonky. Yeah, I feel like you're not in the moment.
So going to London and then like spending the better part of a week walking the city, going to museums, traveling around every day, seeing the sights, and then running the London Marathon at the end is a bad idea? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes, Michael. Yeah. That's a very bad idea.
Yeah.
Noted for the future. Okay, so let's segue right into our first topic. We've got obviously 2 topics today I said off the top here. Well, we'll get into the hottest trends of 2025 in a bit, but first we got to talk about this sort of spicy story that's bubbled up in the last couple of days as a bunch of third-party apps that leverage Strava's platform and data have been walled out. So Strava changed its API permissions or settings. So basically, the long and the short of it is Strava. If you're certain apps that are pulling data from Strava, say you're a coaching app like Final Surge, which Alex, I know you use to communicate with your coach to upload your daily runs so that your coach can take a look at them. Final Surge has now been walled out and a bunch of other apps as well. Questions are, is this sort of a big deal, little deal, no deal at all? And also, what does this portend? So Alex, you've actually been directly affected by this in a way. What's it been like, this shift where you've like Strava and your coaching app are now sort of existing in 2 separate worlds?
Yeah, so I started using Final Surge earlier this year when I started training with my coach, John. Final Surge is the platform he uses to communicate with his athletes. And what Final Surge would do is I wouldn't really have to put much on Final Surge because it would just connect with my Strava data. It would pull my Strava data. And so my coach, John, doesn't have to go on Strava. He can stay on his app, Final Surge, and look at it through there. And it was very easy for me. Now that won't be possible. So I'll have to go on Final Surge, and either I'm going to have to manually upload my runs, or I find a way to connect it with, because I use an Apple Watch, so I'd have to connect it with my Apple Fitness app or whatever, right? Most GPS watches have their own platform. Garmin has its own platform. Apple has its own platform. Coros, and so on. And so maybe what I can end up doing is connecting the Apple Watch with Final Surge, but either way, it's a lot less intuitive. It was really nice to just use it with Strava because I think, like most other runners, I had become pretty dependent on Strava to just take in all of my training data, store it, and not really think about it. So that's going to be a hurdle. So we were talking a little bit before this podcast because the pathway was I run it uploads to Strava, Final Surge pulls it. Now, Katelyn, you're a coach and you use Training Peaks, right? And it's a little bit different. So this doesn't seem to affect what's going on at Training Peaks, right?
Yeah. When I got the news, I kind of checked it out and to see if it was going to affect me, but it seems like it's not, because as a coach, I use Training Peaks instead. And most all of my athletes use or Garmin or Coros or even an Apple Watch. I have a couple with Apple Watches as well. But what happens is I don't even use Strava to look at their information. I just kind of have it more of as a social thing. So what happens is all of my athletes, when they finish their workouts automatically upload to either Garmin Connect or Coros or whatever the app is for that watch, or straight from the Apple Watch. Everything goes directly to Training Peaks. So when they finish a workout, it'll go into Training Peaks. Now, if they also have their watch set up to go directly to Strava as well, and it's another app that is connected to their device, then it will also upload to Strava. But Strava for me isn't the middleman. So it goes directly to Training Peaks, and I'm still going to be able to get all of my analysis because I don't use Strava as kind of that middleman communication. So yeah, I don't think that it should actually affect me at all, as I don't have Strava in that position.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that are going on here behind the scenes. One is, so Strava is saying that a big reason why they're doing this is to protect the privacy of your data, of your individual data. But another way of looking at that, and this is the criticism you see when you look on X or you read various think pieces about this that are out there. DC Rainmaker, the sort of well-known product reviewer that's on YouTube, has talked about this at length. The Verge has got a great piece about this as well. And I think another way to think about, Strava saying, we're trying to protect your data. We don't want your data to go to third parties. We can't trust them for, what they're going to use this data for, whether they're going to, mine all the users' data to create some form of AI or whatever. Another way of saying that is we don't want them to have this very valuable data that we accrue from you giving it to us for free, like any other social media platform that we've come to realize is maybe does not always have our best intentions in mind, or maybe, like their bottom line is profit. And that can mean serving the customer, the user, but it can also mean other things as well. So that leads me to think that there's only one reason why they're doing this, and is that they recognize that this data is valuable, and they are the ones that want to leverage this data because they are collecting around 120 million users data, probably really a percentage of that are using Strava on a regular basis, but that's still several million users providing lots and lots of data for their algorithms to evolve. And I think we're going to see an AI coaching app from Strava. We joked around on this pod a month or two ago about Strava's introducing this AI assistant, basically, that was like this bot that was like, hey, Alex, you had a really good run today. Maybe you should run 1 more kilometer tomorrow. And it was very rudimentary and kind of silly and not a very good product. I think a lot of people were pretty turned off by it. But that doesn't mean they're not going to double down on this. Like, I see Strava as a company that is trying to figure out how to, pull up the drawbridge, close the ecosystem, have a complete package that it offers to its users so that people will pay for it. And I think they're looking at, AI coaching apps like Runna, and they're like, if we can't acquire Runna, maybe we'll just build our own Runna within our own within our own moated kingdom here.
I feel like they have a really long way to go, though, because reading those paragraphs and what they're generating on AI, it just seems that it's something, slightly positive no matter what you do. So even if you have a crappy run, they say something positive, because I've had some rough runs, and they try to stick something positive in it, which I guess is great because it's motivating, but then it's very generalized. The information is just very generalized that you can probably figure out by looking at your own run. So I feel like they have a long way to go to kind of transform that into a useful coaching app. Of course, I'm anti AI coaching, obviously.
Yeah, we should say that, full disclosure, right? What we're doing and what we're interested in at Marathon Handbook is very human centered, right?
Right.
We're, it's about it's about the people you run with. It's about, I strongly believe that, you become a better runner and enjoy it more if you're running with a group of people. If you're working with a coach that you can actually talk to or even see in person from time to time, I think that's ideal. It's not always going to happen in 2024, but yeah, I'm at least the current iteration of AI I find is pretty rudimentary. Now that's going to change
Right.
quite quickly, I think.
Yeah, it
So
will.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think even outside of what might happen with or might happen or might not happen with Strava I think this shows a pretty significant it's a pretty significant moment for Strava because what they're doing, I think, is they're you said this, Michael, or I think in Austin when we were talking last week while at TREs, they're kind of taking the Apple model where they're closing themselves off and creating their own little world, which means they probably don't see the value in exposure as much as they used to. I think for a while, an important part of Strava's business model was probably to be exposed to new runners, so they would play friendly with these other apps, right? So you're on Instagram and your friend puts a story that shows Strava. Oh, what is this app? I'm going to get it. Now they're so big that at least inside of the running world, that maybe they don't see that value anymore in exposure. I'm not sure what their financials are, but it kind of shows that they think that they can take it out on their own.
There's an opportunity here for a company like Garmin with Garmin Connect to really kind of push its platform, because they can offer Garmin Connect for free, because their model is making money off of the device, off the hardware, right? Whether they do that or not, I don't know. Garmin sort of works in mysterious ways, I find, and they've been very comfortable being an industry leader with the watch, and I don't think that their primary source of revenue as a company overall is running watches. I think it's probably military contracts and marine navigation software, hardware, and that sort of thing. But it would be cool to see if there was another player that stepped in and was like, okay, this is an opportunity for us to also build our own running centric social media. And the platform is free and it interacts with all these devices, and it's going to be sort of more open source and more friendly to more people. But that's a big project. So I don't know if we're going to see that, but that's something that could happen, because Strava has really kind of dominated this space for 10 years now. So they were founded in 2009. It's been a while. So anyway, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get into our big meaty topic of the pod, which is, well, we were in Austin last week. If you listen to this podcast regularly, we were together for the first time,
Yes.
which was weird and lovely. And we got to see basically everything that is coming at you in terms of shoes, gear, innovations in the next 12, 13 months, and we got to see some 2026 stuff that we cannot talk about, unfortunately. But we'll talk about the hottest trends that are coming at you in 2025 in running right after the break. We'll be right back. All right, guys, it's crystal ball time. Let's look into the crystal ball and see what we can see for 2025 in running. We got a little we're cheating here because we got to see everything. Yeah. So if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, I highly recommend you do, because it had that live energy, because the three of us were in the same space, potting together, making eye contact. It was crazy.
I'm seriously considering moving to Toronto.
Yes, do it, Katelyn.
So we can all be together and pod once a week, all in the same room.
It's so much more fun.
It was so much fun.
Not that I don't enjoy hanging out with you guys on this Riverside we use, kind of like Zoom. But so yeah, we got to see in Austin, Texas, the running event, basically this big showcase. Every brand, big and small in running, pretty much. I don't think any brands that I could think of were missing, really. Mm-hmm. They showed up and they gave us a sneak peek at everything they've got coming down the pipe in the next 12 months and even up to 24 months from now. can't talk about the stuff in 2026. We've been sworn to secrecy, but we can talk about 2025. Hottest trends coming at us in 2025. Alex, what's the first thing that jumped out to you from walking around on the showroom floor in Austin?
When I left that night, I thought about my conversations that day. And the thing that popped out at me was that there were not one, but two different product experts who used the word quiver, which is not a word that I hear very much unless I'm talking about skiing with Michael.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They used it in the context of quiver of shoes. Basically, you come to your training build with a bag full of shoes, and you have 3 or 4 different pairs to choose from depending on the workout of the day. That's the way now. It's more expensive, it's more complicated, but if you're a serious runner or you have a bit of extra money to spend, that seems to be the way to tackle the sport. You have your training shoes, your workout shoes, and your racing shoes. Gone are the days of buying one pair of Kinvaras or whatever and doing everything in them. And to me, that's the biggest trend of 2025 is brands really went hard at that this year. So we'd go to a booth, and I'll stay with the Saucony theme. Saucony is a great example for this. You remember the Endorphin, okay? Endorphin is their racing line. They had the Endorphin Pro, one of the first ever carbon plated shoes. The Endorphin line now has diversified and now has 3 streams, okay? You can watch our Saucony video on YouTube. They're all the same color. It actually looks pretty sharp. They have the Endorphin Trainer for training runs, naturally. The Endorphin Speed, which is for workouts. It's got a bit more supercritical foam, made a little bit lighter. I think it's got a plastic plate. And then you have your Endorphin Elite 2. So the Speed is the 5 now. Endorphin Elite 2 is for races, and that's got a carbon plate, faster foam. It's lighter and it's more aggressive. And I think the way that Saucony would want you to do it is before you start a training block, buy a trainer, buy a Speed, buy an Elite, and there you go. You have your quiver of shoes. So a lot of brands are going that way. The North Face, that was the second company to use the word quiver. They have the same thing in the trail world, more so trail world. They've completely diversified their offering inside of their Vective line. And there were examples of that all over the floor. So to me, that's the very first thing that stood out without even getting into specifics of what the shoes are made of just yet.
Yeah, the quiver. I mean, it's a concept that exists as we've talked about before on the podcast. I ski, and it's always like, I mean, this is there's subreddit dedicated to this. Like, look at my ski quiver, look at the different skis that I have for different conditions, and tell me what you think of my quiver, right? So we might get that with running. Who knows? Might get that on like the advanced running subreddit of like, you take a shot of your shoes and it's like, here's the quiver of shoes I got. Here's my everyday trainer. Here's my super trainer or my workout shoe. And here's the racing shoe that I go with. And then maybe even you have like a fourth shoe that kind of like overlaps and is sort of a hybrid, or like, here's my trail shoe when I do some trail running as well. Cool concept. I think it's great for running. I think it's great for brands. If you love a brand, like we looked at, ASICS, Brooks, New Balance, Saucony in particular, their quivers are like, they're solid. They have a solid sort of like soup to nuts. You can get in there. If you like one of their shoes, the ASICS Nimbus, and then you go to like the Novablast, the Superblast, and the Paris, the Metasky Paris. They all sort of have it you're kind of graduating in feel to like comfortable, faster, fast. So if you love ASICS, like, why wouldn't you buy all those shoes? As long as you have the money, of course.
Yeah, I accidentally fell into an ASICS quiver earlier this year without noticing it. I was training in the Nimbus. I was racing in the Metaspeed. I think people will naturally gravitate towards them because you do tend to fit well inside of a certain brand of shoe. Some people are Nike people, others aren't, for example.
I think that this is the previous shoe shoe rotation, right? So previously, before people started talking about quivers, even you, Alex, I think everyone stole this from you when you were talking about needing to have your your everyday shoe for the recovery runs, and then you have your super trainers for your workouts, and then you have your racing shoes. Previously we thought of it as a shoe rotation, or even to have a couple of different pairs of shoes to rotate through during the week, simply to give your shoes more than 24 hours of time to kind of, for the foam, etc., to get back to its natural state. And so I remember that kind of being a previous topic where you would say, well, you want to at least have 2 pairs of shoes so you can wear one and then rotate them out each day. And I think that just started growing with shoes, because even a few years ago, I remember thinking, well, I want a lighter shoe for my workouts because I want to have something that I can really, that is going to be nice and light for me to do, I don't know, track work. And then I want something nice and cushy for my long runs. And then, now it's evolved a lot more into that. It's like, okay, now I want a super trainer because it's more responsive and it's soft. So I think that's pretty much where this quiver has come from. The shoe rotation has evolved into the quiver.
Who you got, Alex? Who do you think has the best quiver in the market right now? Quiver is such a weird word.
Quiver. I'm quivering.
It's like
right
it's like
now.
Moist. It's like woo.
Oh
yeah.
no!
Just,
you're not.
no.
Yeah, don't say that word. Yeah.
Sorry.
They need to come up with a different word. I think the ASICS quiver did well for me this year. They have a really good one. I used Saucony as an example because I think they might be the first brand to so overtly do it. The North Face also on the trail side, but it's the little things, right? It's in the color where the endorphin line was presented that way. It was like, look, if you like the endorphin shoes, here are the exact 3 shoes that you get. Yeah. With ASICS, I like all of their products individually, but I don't think they're yet marketed in such an overt way that, like, okay, the Metaspeed Sky Paris is bright red, and so is the Nimbus, and so is the, so I think marketing wise, Saucony's got it down. I think of other brands like Hoka and On. They don't have a quiver as much as that they just have a whole lot of shoe options, which is also cool, right? You go into Hoka or On, and it's like, let's use Hoka as an example, okay? Because they've recently released this shoe called the Skyflow, which doesn't feel as foamy and soft and cushy as the Clifton or even the Bondi, but those shoes are all training shoes. So depending on what you like, say if you like Hoka's other little specs, like their heel cradle or their little rock forward profile, but you don't quite like the cushioning of it, you can go for a slightly altered version of a Hoka shoe. That's the other development, I think, is just brands coming out with a bunch of different types of shoe. And so when you're at that point, maybe you don't quite need a quiver that's so tailored as the Saucony one.
What's interesting is the 2 giants in running, and 2 giant running brands are, of course, Nike and Adidas. And I think those are 2 companies that have some real holes in their quiver, right? Nike is sort of a mess, I think, quite frankly. Like, I'm a fan of the Pegasus, but many are not. They find it kind of too lean, too light, too specific, too neutral, too advanced in some cases. The Vomero is a very good shoe, but I don't think they market it very well. But they've got a great super shoe, right? And then their super trainer, they've just struggled with trying to do like, Pegasus Plus and whatever. Pegasus Turbo at one point. And Adidas they have the best in show, like hyper shoe, super shoe. They have a great super shoe in the Adios 4 that they just announced, which you've got a great video on their lineup talking about that shoe in particular in detail, because that's a really exciting shoe. Then they've got the SL, which is, I think, a great sort of like racer trainer. So like a good workout shoe. You go down to the everyday, and they're really leaning into the Supernova. And I run in the most recent Supernova, and it's lacking. And then you got the Boston and the Adios, which are kind of, I think, a little bit more advanced and very firm shoes. So they still have some work to do there at the kind of the baseline of like the biggest part of the market, the shoe most people wear, the everyday trainer. Okay, so let's move on. Katelyn, when you're walking around a TRE, what hit you is like, oh man, this is going to be an exciting trend in 2025?
Yeah, I think what I noticed more than anything, and it's probably because I'm a trail runner over above all else, is I noticed that a lot of brands are getting more into trail. And we've spoken about it a lot of times about how trail running is growing and the community is growing, even though it's still such a small percentage of the pie. I think that these brands want a piece of that pie. So they're starting to develop their own brands. I remember the first booth actually that we went to Mount to Coast, and Mount to Coast is an ultra brand, but we were talking about the fact that it's an ultra brand, but like a road ultra, thinking about, 100Ks on the road more than anything else, which do exist, but that's even a smaller niche. That's even a smaller market than ultra trail running. And they are going to come out with their first trail shoe, which I'm super excited about seeing because, Michael, you have really spoken praises about Mount to Coast, and I'm excited to try the shoes, and I'm excited to try their first trail shoe. And so seeing that, seeing the brands really gravitate towards trail shoes. And the biggest trend I saw is the companies that already have trail shoes really focusing on improving their super trail shoe. So now we aren't just seeing super shoes, the Vaporflies, the Alphaflies, all of these super shoes for road running and for marathons, but the trail world has recently gotten into creating super shoes with carbon plates for racing on the trail. So the interesting part about this is that we really need to take into consideration the difference. The brands need to take into consideration the differences between trail running and road running. We need to think about if you're going to be on the trails and if it's going to be really technical, or even if not, you need to still have a lot of stability on the trails. And they're making these improvements to the super shoes with the carbon plates. For example, North Face spoke about their forked carbon plate. So if you have just a one piece solid carbon plate like you would in a road shoe, that's not going to give you the flexibility that you need when you're running on really technical terrain. So what they're doing is they're making the carbon plate a different shape. They're making it forked. So you have a little bit more flexibility when you're running on that uneven ground. So you don't feel that it's stiff and that it's unforgiving when you have to be able to get through those tricky sections, right? So that's something that I found really interesting with a couple of the brands. Also Hoka, is that they're really trying to make this super shoe specific for the trails. You'll also see that perhaps the stack height on a super shoe for the trail isn't going to be quite as big as the stack height for a super shoe on the road for one of the same reasons. You want to have that more stability. You need to be maybe a tiny bit closer to the ground. It's all about that feel that you want to have, right? That foot to ground feel, and say, okay, I need to be able to feel the terrain a little bit more to be able to stabilize myself, to be able to maneuver around these tricky sections. So I think that making that super shoe and kind of the maturing of the trail super shoe is something that we're seeing and that we're going to see a lot of in 2025. So they're getting into that market, and they're getting those elites and those, well, any trail runner that wants to run a faster race, a specific super shoe for the trails.
I was hit by that level of expertise, caught not by surprise, but I was impressed when we went into the Norda booth, which is a small Canadian company that makes these like really nice tailored trail running shoes. And their new product was this shoe called the 005.
Yep.
And I lifted it, and I had somewhat of the same experience that I had when I first lifted an Adidas Pro Evo 1. It was just, this stuff is a lot lighter than I thought. And
214 grams, Alex.
There you go.
Yeah. It looks like a tank, right? Because it's designed to be this super durable, super tough, kind of really ultra trail focused shoe. Luggy, you're in for the long haul with this thing. So you're thinking like, this thing's like a boot. I'm going to pick it up and it's going to this is going to be like a 13-ounce shoe or something. And you pick it up and you're like, what? This thing is like feather light. It's crazy. And they last, we talked to the founder and he was just like, we're designing shoes to last like 1,000 plus like miles, I think, like crazy amounts. Like basically throw anything you can at this shoe. It's going to last a really, really long time.
Yeah. And they perform, right? You're right, Katelyn, too. Like, it's a maturing of the trail running shoe industry. A lot of these trail companies had not only experts and founders, but also professional athletes in their booth. So Norda had Jason Schlarb there, who had helped with the creation of the shoe, the 005, and had been using the shoe and could just tell me very intently why the shoe is made the way it was. So no, I was just impressed by the level of detail and orientation towards performance inside of these trail running shoes.
And like Norda and a couple of these other brands are like, they're really challenging, especially in the trail space. They're really challenging, the bigger brands like the North Face or Solomon, for example. Normal's another brand like Norda, the Kilian Jornet's boutique trail running brand. Both of these companies are really challenging the big guys to step up their technical prowess, but also their design aesthetic as well. Like I thought Norda was a really it's been around for a few years, this brand, but really like complete, well thought out. Same with Mount to Coast. Just, the proof of concept right from the onset. It's like, wow, they have a really beautiful, considered aesthetic. And then their design principles are very solid, and they're making really good shoes. For being an indie shoe brand, they're making really good shoes. The Mount to Coast trail shoe, probably the shoe I'm most excited to try in 2025. I look forward to getting the tester samples that will get sent to us, because
I can't wait.
They got 2 trail shoes coming out. They got one that's more luggy and more sort of for muck and grime and running in the mountains and just really getting after it in a really nasty situation. The Katelyn Tossie 5 a.m. run.
What I need here.
Yes. And then they've got this sort of hybrid shoe, which is, the smaller lugs. You can run on the road a little bit with it. Like if you're doing like your typical, a lot of ultras will have some tarmac that you got to run on, right? You got to cross some roads and that sort of thing. So that, or your everyday shoe where it's like you live in a city, you want to run out your front door. You don't want to have to like run in road shoes and carry your trail shoes with you and do something weird where you have to do like a change before you get on the trail. It's like you can actually just run on the road for a couple kilometers or miles and it's not going to hurt you, which I would say, there's my segue into one of the trends that I'm foreseeing for 2025. And again, this is not a new concept, but I think it was really getting kind of positioned as something like new and exciting by a lot of these brands, which is this whole like hybrid road to trail shoe, the do-all, the Swiss Army knife of shoes. And we saw quite a few of those. We saw quite a few of those shoes presented by different brands. Again, not a crazy new concept, but something that's really I think will be really pushed in 2025. Alex, what else you got? What else did you see?
What else did I see? I saw something that I think has been lacking in the running world for quite a while. And I can't like sing its praises all too much because I haven't tried it yet. And to be honest, I won't really know what it means. It's a super shoe for beginners.
Oh.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Oh, that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I like that.
This is coming from the On booth, and it's called the Cloudboom Max. And when I'm thinking about a super shoe for beginners, when I heard this from the On rep, I just got to thinking like, wait, what do beginning runners wear when they run their first marathon? And it dawned on me that I think many beginners I know, many people in my life, friends or family who started running in the last few years, do not bother with super shoes because they self-select out of it, right? They tell themselves, I'm not a fast runner. I'm just participating. So they buy a pair of Nimbuses and they race in that. And that's it. I also have come to know a few people who are beginners, but they have this idea that they want the best shoe out there because why not? Yeah. And so they buy a pair of Alpha Flies and they race in those.
And they also run every day in them until someone's like, that's a really terrible idea.
And some of them like run their errands in the Alpha Flies. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Save those shoes. But what happens sometimes with beginners wearing Alpha Flies or like super tailored super shoes is that, well, they start feeling sore, right? Because they're not all that used to running because they're new to it. And the Alpha Flies, I keep saying Alpha Flies, but this could be a Metaspeed or an Endorphin or whatever, any type of equivalent, are very specific shoes. They're not made with much support. They're made to be fast. And so I suppose there was maybe this type of shoe missing in the market that is a super shoe that has carbon, that has some supercritical foam, but also that has a good amount of support. So how that would compare to another super shoe is that it's a little heftier, little has a bit more weight to it, made to support maybe some little imbalances here and there, but still will get you to the finish line faster than a Nimbus or a New Balance 880. So I thought that was kind of cool. Now, of course, it's just coming out next year. I'm wondering if beginners will adopt this thing. It is kind of a limited market. Like, none of us will buy it because we don't consider ourselves beginners. There might still be beginners who say, no, I want the Alpha Fly.
Mm-hmm.
And there will definitely still be beginners who say, no, I don't want to mess with super shoes, right? I just want a nice, stable, comfortable shoe that won't get me injured. Fair enough. So I'm curious to see if this gets adopted, but that's a new concept that I think is an interesting way to go for On.
Yeah. And I've seen like watching your 2025 Brooks preview video on our YouTube channel.
Wow, you were quick. We just published it like 45
we just published it
ago.
today. Yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday morning, and it was dropped on Wednesday morning. So
I also watched it already, Alex. We're fans.
Wow.
We're fans.
Amazing.
we're
Amazing.
not only colleagues, we're also fans. But you were sort of musing about the purpose of the Hyperion Max that Brooks has in their lineup, and that almost sounds like some of these brands now have these shoes that are kind of like more than just a super trainer. And if they were perhaps wise, they would pivot into what On is doing. And they're like, this is a super shoe for your first time marathon runner, for your first time half marathon runner. You know, this is the beginner super trainer, which is a really smart market. Yeah. Cause like for example, I ran Chicago, I'm doing the death march back, walking back from the finish line. You know, you got to walk back to your Airbnb. It was like a couple miles away. And by that point, it's like, you know, people coming in at around like 4.5 hours. It's a lot of people who are, in some cases, this is their first marathon, or they're very new to the marathon, 4.5, 5 hours. And I was curious to see what's on their feet. There were a lot of super shoes, but as you said, Alex, there was also a good mix of like your Brooks Ghost, your ASICS Nimbus, your New Balance 1080, that sort of thing. And so that's the target. That's a big market. It's a lot of people. It's probably the largest number of people when you think about it. It's like, get into this shoe instead of an Alpha Fly. Why don't you try this On beginner super shoe? It's going to last you a bunch of races. You can train in it a bit as well. And it's more designed for you. I mean, it's a clever move. I think we'll see if it sticks, but it's a clever move.
We're one step away from companies creating shoes for every situation. It's going to be like, this is a Novablast for Sagittarius folks who live in the east of the United States.
They're getting a little too specific, I guess.
Do they make a shoe for a Cancer Gemini cusp?
Oh
yeah, I'm complicated, guys. Okay, so I'd say the last one, and this is a big one, Katelyn. And Katelyn stayed an extra day in Austin. Katelyn was solo in Austin for the last like few hours of the show on Friday morning. She wandered around like a free agent. She was just like, brands, show me your wares. And you landed at the CEP booth.
Yes.
So, and that points to, I'd say, one of the biggest trends that I saw, and that's coming in 2025, is just like all of these brands, like lifestyle brands that had nothing to do with running before, like Veja, I think Brazilian brand that makes lifestyle shoes. They've gotten into running, and now they're leaning more and more into it, as we saw in Austin. Hilo Athletics, which is a UK-based company that makes one shoe. It's like a very, very very boutique indie brand. They make one shoe. It's an everyday trainer. It's made entirely, I believe, of natural products. So like I don't think there's any polymers in it at all. Like the midsole, outsole is made of like, I think soybean, I believe. I know Veja were talking about how their shoes were made of rubber and it was sourced from Brazil and it's totally recyclable and so on and so forth. There's that kind of like sustainability play for these indie brands. But lots of indie shoes coming out of the woodwork for
Mm-hmm.
2025. CEP in particular was an interesting one. You
I
got to
tried
run
it.
in their new
Yeah.
shoe. Like, for those who don't know CEP, because it's a bit of an esoteric brand, what is CEP and what was the shoe like?
Yeah, CEP, what it's known for, at least here in Costa Rica, we do have a lot of CEP products, but they're compression products,
Yeah.
compression socks. So, so you think CEP and you think compression socks. So when I was going by the booth, I took a look over and I saw this gorgeous fluorescent pink shoe that was just huge. And I just needed to go see what that was because, first of all, it just like grabbed my attention off the bat because it was so cool looking. It was like when you see people running with the Nike super shoes and they're fluorescent orange and fluorescent pink, and it's just like your eyes go immediately to those shoes to check them out. So I wandered over and I realized that the representative, the Latin American representative, was there, and I know him, and he lives in Costa Rica, and he's a runner. So he came right up to me, and we started talking about the shoe, and he said, "Do you want to give him a try?" So I did put him on, and they had a treadmill there, and I ran in them, and they were super fun because they were really bouncy, responsive, and soft. And I was like, "Oh, isn't this fun?" They have a plastic plate in them. I think Alex mentioned another brand that was also using a plastic plate in one of their newer shoes, and they were just really a fun ride. So I'm looking
Hmm.
forward to. They're not quite out yet, but I'm sure that I'll be able to give them a try, and I'll let you guys know. I can do a bit of a review on them. But it's fun to see these brands coming out with getting into the shoe world because was before just a sock, a compression sock brand for the most part.
We've talked about this like months ago about new brands or brands that exist newly coming into the shoe world, and a really good litmus test for them knowing what's going on in the world of running is if they do play with these plates or supercritical foam. So good on that, good on CEP, because I remember Lululemon in Canada came, well, they're far beyond Canadian now, I guess, but they came out with their Blissfeel and Beyond Field shoes about a year ago now, almost, without a plastic plate or carbon plate or any type of supercritical foam. And I was just left thinking, man, a big brand like that, they needed to come out with a super shoe along with the training shoe. That's what you want. So I'm curious to see what they come up with next.
That's a good bit of prognosticating, actually, for Lululemon. It's like, yeah, that would be the next obvious thing for Lulu. Lulu were not there, by the way. They were not. They were not at the running event,
No,
which was
no.
interesting. I guess they don't always play nice with others. That's the thing, you know. The entire show was the Lululemon show. They would be okay with that. But yeah, Nike was there. They've made appearances in the last number of years. Initially, for many years, they didn't show up at the running event. It was really sort of dominated by the kind of core running brands: Saucony, New Balance, ASICS. Am I missing Brooks? But Nike was there. The Nike colorway for guy. Okay, the Nike colorway for their shoes in 2025 that they're coming out with, especially on the Alpha Fly 3. I don't think we're seeing an Alpha Fly 4, at least not in the first half of 2025. There was no sense that we were going to see that. Um, but the colorway that they've got forthcoming is like these like 1990s style, like paint on the side of your shoes flames.
Oh boy. Okay.
Did you guys see this? It
Yeah,
was
yeah. I
the
think Nike's calling it the Flamin' Hot Cheeto.
It's terrible. It's terrible. It's the ugliest shoe I've ever
Oh
seen.
no.
Ever seen,
It
especially
looks
on that shoe, on the Alpha Fly. It just looks like trashy. It looks trashy.
it looks like a Hot Wheel. You know the little dinky
Yes.
cars,
Oh
Hot Wheel
It
yeah,
dinky
looks like
yeah.
a
The
cars.
Hot Wheel
flames,
Flames.
the flames on the Hot Wheel cars. Okay.
Yeah,
Mattel should sue them. That's copyright infringement.
I'm completely, yeah. I was beside myself. I mean, Nike was a little bit, adventurous, and they played with colorways this last year and names. If you can remember the Volt Dusty Cactus Alpha Fly, which I guess is probably the most common colorway of the Alpha Fly currently,
Yeah.
that neon green.
Yeah.
But that
Oh,
still looks sharp. It still
Yeah.
looks sharp.
I
The
have the
flames thing is weird.
neon orange ones, which I love. Which are well,
Also cool.
they're the Vaporfly. We always do this. You guys always talk about the Alpha Fly, and I always go back to the Vaporfly. I have those like super bright orange and purple Vaporflies, which are just a super sharp color. I love those. Yeah, I missed the flames. I think being Alex's secretary, getting him coffee, being his Sherpa, carrying around his bag, I didn't get to see everything on the floor. Just
Yeah,
kidding. Just kidding, Alex.
I miss having you around, Katelyn, by the way.
I'm kidding. It wasn't quite like that.
His life was so organized for 24 hours.
Now my life is in shambles.
But he and Kosuke did have someone bringing them from appointment to appointment at least. But that's because you guys are so crazy busy. So no, I missed the flames, but I'm gonna take a look. I'm sure we have pictures.
We will. Yeah, we're gonna have. So we'll wrap this thing up here. We'll wrap it up. I'll tease what's on the site and our channels in a second here, but let's just really quickly, just in a couple of seconds, Alex, then Katelyn, then me. What's like just one thing that jumped out the most? Doesn't have to be like a hot trend for 2025, but just like the one thing as we sort of put TRE, the running event, to bed. What was like the one thing that jumped out at you the most, is like the most spectacular or interesting or intriguing thing that jumped out to you?
Okay. I'll go with Adidas using their Light Strike foam on a new trainer that's coming out called the Evo SL, which is basically a boldened version of the Pro Evo 1 that I've been racing in. That's like this not that durable, super light racing shoe. We're going to get this similar type of technology in a training shoe that looks super cool and different.
Sick,
and I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Katelyn?
Okay. I am going to say, and maybe it was just a personal moment, but the coolest thing was trying on and hopefully going to be able to actually wear and run in was the Cloudboom Strike LS from On.
Oh, God.
That was my favorite moment of the entire TRE. I put on those shoes. They fit like a glove. I was like bouncing around the stand. Like, can I please just take these now? Because I want to go for a run in them so badly. Yeah, I was psyched. And when they said that I was going to be able to try them out and they were going to send me some, guys, don't forget On representatives who spoke to me. I'm very excited.
We'll send this timestamped in the YouTube of our video of the podcast. I'll just do the timestamp link and I'll send it to the On people and be like, I just
a
with
friendly reminder.
No subject line in the email, nothing. Yeah.
But it was very, very cool. And I said, wow, these shoes just make me feel like I'm on another planet. Like, I felt like they were very awesome. So I'm excited to try those out. So that was one of my favorite moments where I was like, there's been so much hype about it. I know that they've been out for a while. Helen O'Beary has won, marathons in them. But I just said, for me, it's new because I had never put them on before. And I thought, this is awesome. So that was very cool.
You still remain one of the very few people that have ever worn this shoe, because it's they've only, I think, released a couple hundred pairs of this shoe. It's still extremely, extremely hard to get. This is the shoe that's made by a robot.
Yeah.
And it's the real deal. It's amazing.
Amazing.
I've done a little jog in them and they're crazy. What's my big thing? My big thing is Mount to Coast. Mm-hmm. They're legit. They were a big mystery for us. All of us sort of collectively, the chatter going into the running event, the three of us, we talked a bit about like, is this Mount to Coast company? Like, who are they basically? And we got to meet the head designer. We got to meet all their staff that they've got spun up in the United States, who are great people who really know running. Like, I talked to one of their product people who's based in, I think, Washington State. She's a pretty serious ultra trail runner, totally newer stuff, was super psyched about it. And then talked to the designer, talked to the guy who does like the actual visual design, the aesthetic stuff. And then I talked to the guy who oversees the production of all of the shoes. And they just knew what they were talking about. Backgrounds from Brooks and Nike, and I think New Balance as well. And just really brilliant company, really interesting what they're doing. And I think their trail shoes, they got 2 trail shoes coming out. They look awesome. And I can't wait to test them. And I've really liked their screwy, weird road ultra shoes, which I don't use for road ultras. I just use to run in, but I really like the fit and feel of them. And I think they're a really kind of like forward thinking product that really just the design is so nice of them as well. So I think for me, Mount to Coast really stood out as like an impressive brand. And there's another boutique brand, a very high-end brand. I don't want to mention them, but there's something coming out from them in 2025 that I think will be very interesting. Could be a huge success or could be a big failure. It's sort of like a real big gamble for them. That'll be interesting to watch as well. Okay, guys, let's wrap this one up. Sear, there's just a crazy just a content dump every day on YouTube right now. You're all of our running event previews are going up like basically as soon as our video editor Kosuke is done with them. He's just uploading them to YouTube. We've got a bunch left.
Yeah, so we just published Brooks, Adidas, Saucony is out, Hoka's out. I think next to come are On, Nike, and then basically all the brands that we mentioned on this podcast. The North Face is out, Norda's coming out, Mount to Coast is coming out. I think we scheduled I think it was 18 meetings on that day. So we'll have something insane. Like 18 videos. So yeah, keep an eye on our channel because they're coming out 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah, so subscribe to the YouTube channel to get all of that stuff front facing right away so you don't miss anything. And Alex, like you really went the extra mile to make sure that these videos weren't just like, watching paint dry. You really they're fun, they're interesting. Everyone that we talked to at the brands were super engaged and super excited to chat with us. And we put a little extra into them, some of the stats and details about each of the shoes as well. So we'll also package all those videos together, and we're going to send out an e-blast on our newsletter platform so that you can have them all in one place and watch them all if you'd like. Our newsletter goes out 5 days a week. Katelyn, you are one of the shepherds of the newsletter.
Yep.
We got like 150 something thousand people subscribing to it. If you don't subscribe to it, go to our site, marathonhandbook.com, subscribe to that. We've got training plans. We were pushing them this week because, you do the math, spring marathon's
get going.
16 weeks away. So
I've been getting some phone calls, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We've got, I got to start training now. Do you have availability?
Yeah. We've got free training plans for just about every single person, every type of runner you could possibly think of, for everything from an ultra all the way down to a 5K, at every ability level, every time goal level, a slew of marathon plans for basically sub 5, sub 4:30, just every 10 minutes, we've got a marathon plan for it.
And we've been doing some revamping. So if you've seen them before, but you want to take another look, like our sub 4 and our sub 3, which is a pretty nice one. Our sub 3 marathon training plan has also been revamped. So it's brand spanking new if you guys want to take a look at it. I actually just put it in a newsletter the other day to see if some people are going for that tough goal, if they want to check it out. It's pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
The plan is tough, but
it's got to be tough because that's a pinnacle time. It's a hard time to hit. Even if you're a talented runner, it's that's sub 3 is, that's it's the great goal for many people. All right. So that's it, everybody. Talk to you next week, and
happy Thanksgiving.
You're listening to some Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. And hopefully we gave you a reprieve from your family for 45 minutes to an hour. All right. Until next week, guys. Talk to you soon.